Hey, Jordan Belfort here, the real Wolf of Wall Street. I am in Porto Alegre, Brazil. Great place at the Unicinos University here. And the event is named Cognition. And I'm here to really give you an introduction to mastering the art of sales, influence, and persuasion. Or to put it more directly, really, how do you close the deal? At the end of the day, when it comes to making money, building a career at anything, at some point, you're either gonna have to negotiate effectively, convince, persuade someone, and basically close the deal. How do you essentially get someone to see things your way? How do you get someone to say yes, right? Now, I think one of the biggest mistakes that I see around the world is that there's, I guess, two types of people. There's those that consider themselves salespeople, and then those that consider themselves as civilians. They're not in sales. But the truth is that everybody is in sales in one form or another. If you want to move through life in an empowered way, if you want to be able to essentially get your point across to people and just really, live a great life, you have to learn how to share your ideas, your hopes, your dreams, get people to essentially buy into your way of thinking in a way that gets them to say yes, gets you what you want, and also fills their needs too. Remember, at the end of the day, nothing happens in this world unless something gets sold. I always say people love to buy things and they hate to get sold to. So your job as someone that's out there influencing and persuading is, how do you get people to take the actions that they should be taking, but they're blocked in so? In other words, what sales is not about is trying to get people to do things they shouldn't do. That's unethical persuasion. Ethical persuasion is about getting people to make decisions that they should, in fact, be making. They're in their best interest, and they're somehow blocked in some way. They can't get themselves to the point where they're certain enough to say yes. And that word, you're gonna hear me, I'm gonna write this word down here. The word is certainty. And it's a word you're gonna hear me speak about very often when it comes to sale. And basically, when we think about sales, what selling really is, at the highest level, big picture, is the transference of emotion. Sales is the transference of emotion. And the primary emotion that you're transferring is the emotion of certainty. In other words, when someone, imagine if you're in a retail store, right? And you're selling someone a piece of furniture, right? And someone walks into that store and they're potentially a buyer of a certain piece of furniture. And they happen to look at it and they lay eyes on a beautiful desk or a chair or a bedroom set, right? Just making this up as I go along here, right? It could be any product, any good, any service, right? So as soon as they lay eyes on that service, they get a sense of, just imagine like on a scale of 1 to 10, right? With 10 being the absolute best, the greatest thing. It's, oh my God, I love that piece of furniture. It's beautiful. It's a great price. It's gonna look wonderful in my house. It's gonna make me feel so good to own. I love that piece of furniture. Or walking into a car dealership, I love that car. What a beautiful car. What a great price it is for that car. I'm gonna feel wonderful driving the car. It's the best value for the money, right? So if someone walks into a car dealership and they lay eyes on the car and they absolutely love it, that would be the equivalent of them being at a 10 on the scale of certainty for the product. They're absolutely certain that this is the best product for them. Alternatively, someone could also walk into the dealership and based on their own preconceived notions, their experiences, their own individual taste, they could also look at this car and be at a 1, which is like, ugh, that is the ugliest, most overpriced, most terrible car in the world. I would never buy that car. I wouldn't be caught dead in that car. That's an equal possibility. So in other words, no matter what you're selling, an automobile, even an idea, a service, piece of furniture, right? As soon as a potential customer enters the sales setting, they are going to be at some point on this continuum. They might be at a 10, which is very rare, but they love it. They might be at a 1 where they hate it, also very rare, but typically they're somewhere in the middle. They might be at a 5, 6, 7, or a 4. In other words, when someone walks into a situation when they're ready to buy something, they look at a product, and based on all their preconceived notions, they essentially land somewhere on this continuum. Typically 5, 6, based on their preconceived notions. That's what's going on. So then what does the salesperson do? What's the job of the salesperson? Well, in reality, what's happening, imagine if you were a car salesperson and someone walks into your dealership, and when they look at the automobile that you're selling, let's say it's a Ford or a Toyota, right? And like, okay, that looks pretty nice. They're like at a 5 or a 6. Well, what's the job of the salesperson? The job of the salesperson is to say things to them, explain it to them, show them the car in a certain way, maybe take them for a test drive. And the salesperson, where are they on this scale? Where is the salesperson? Well, the salesperson, they better be at a 10. See, the salesperson knows everything about the product. They know how great it is. They know it's the best product in the class of products. They know it's going to help the person. They know all the features and benefits of this particular product, right? So what the salesperson is doing, essentially, the salesperson is absolutely positively certain that this car is the best car for the customer. That's what they're doing. They know that. And their job now, what they're trying to do is essentially persuade the customer that this is the greatest. I know right now you're at a 5, Mr. or Mrs. Smith, whatever your last name is, right? They're at a 5, but I'm going to show you things. I'm going to explain this to you. And when I'm done, you'll be able to see how awesome it is. You'll be at a 10 just like me. That's the job of the salesperson. So the customer enters into the setting, the sales setting, right? And they're at a lower level of certainty. The salesperson, meeting you, is at this ultra high level of certainty. And then the salesperson, what they try to do, their goal is they want to say things, do things, show the prospect things that essentially transfer the certainty they're feeling inside, transfer that certainty to the prospect. So when the prospect is done hearing everything about the product, they are at a 10 as well. They are equally certain. You get that? So what's happening is people enter sales encounters at relatively lower levels of certainty, and the salespeople are at very high levels of certainty, and a salesperson, a good one, goes about explaining, presenting, showing them how it works, showing all the benefits, shows them why it has the best cost-benefit ratio, the best value proposition. And when that salesperson is done, if they've done a really great job, they have now taken the prospect who started off here and they've moved them to very close to a 10 on the certainty scale for the product. Because think about it. Imagine, what does someone sound like when they're at a 10? Imagine if you're selling, we'll stick with cars here, right? It's a very common product, right? So imagine you're selling a Ford, a truck, right? And a customer walks in and you say to them, hey, what do you think of the car? Well, what would they sound like if they were at a 10? What would someone sound like? Well, if you said, hey, what do you think of the car? They say, oh my God, this is the best car in the world. I love this car. It's beautiful. What a great deal it is. I know it's going to last me for many, many years. It's made really well. It's just beautiful. I'm going to feel great. Oh my God, I love this car. That's what a 10 would sound like. What would a 1 sound like? If you said, what do you think of this car? They'd say, ugh, this is the worst car in the world. I would never buy this car. It's disgusting, it's gross, it's overpriced. I wouldn't be caught dead in this car. That's what a 1 sounds like, right? Question. When you ask someone to actually buy the car, you're the salesperson, and now you ask them for the order. Where do you want them on this certainty scale? What's better for you? Do you want them at a 1 or as close to a 10 as possible? The answer is obvious. You want them to be as close to a 10 as possible. So that's the first thing you need to understand. As a salesperson, what are you doing? It's really simple. What you're doing is you're saying things to people, you're making presentations to them, you're explaining things about a certain product, a certain good, a certain service, and the reason you're saying these things to them in a certain way is every word out of your mouth, every action you take is specifically designed to increase their level of certainty, to get them to as close to a 10 as possible. That's the job of a salesperson. So that's why I start off by saying, I said sales is the transference of emotion. The transference of emotion. And the emotion that you're transferring is the emotion of certainty. If you get the prospect really, really certain about the product, question, will they buy? So let's say when you're done making your presentation, let's say you've done an incredible job with the product and you've actually got the prospect to a very high level of certainty. Will they buy from you? Yes or no? Well, many of you are probably saying, yeah, well, I guess if I get the person to an absolute 10, they love the product and they think it's the best deal out there, I guess they'll buy, right? I've asked this question all over the world in rooms in Brazil, in South America, all over South Africa, in Australia, Asia, all over the world. And typically people say, yeah, well, if I get them to a 10, they're likely to buy. But the answer is not actually yes. It's not yes, and it's not no. The answer is maybe, as in maybe they will buy, or maybe they won't. And let me tell you why that's the case. Because when we're talking about selling and transferring emotion, and the emotion being certainty, so a salesperson transfers certainty, the first thing that we think about is always what? The product. That a salesperson sells products. So if you're a car salesperson, your job is to transfer certainty about a particular type of car. If you're selling software for a computer company, right? A software company, right? You're explaining the features and benefits of a certain software package or a platform, whatever it might be, and you're trying to create massive certainty about that particular product, that online product. If you're selling a service, whether you're a plumber or an electrician or a home builder, you're transferring certainty about that service you're providing, right? That's the job of a salesperson. But here's the problem with that. It's actually a bit more complicated because your goal, your job, is transferring certainty. So let's say you do that. Let's say you transfer, let's go down to a software package. You're trying to sell software to a company. And let's say that after you're done explaining all the features and benefits of your product, they're at a 10. They say, wow, that's the best software program. That's the best package I've seen out there. That's going to really work. But what if in the process of doing that, you somehow did it in a way that the prospect didn't trust you? You did it in a way that made them distrust you. You were sneaky about it. You went too fast. Something in the way that you explain things, they're like, okay, I love the product, but I don't trust the salesperson. Are they going to buy from you? Yes or no? The answer is absolutely not. People do not buy from other people who they do not trust. We don't buy from those we don't trust, and we seldom buy from people whom we don't like. Only if we're really desperate. If we don't trust them, we will not buy. In fact, if you love a product, you really love it, but you don't trust the salesperson who's trying to sell to you, what do? You'll tell the salesperson, let me think about it, and you'll go find the same product and you'll buy it from someone that you trust. The point is this: there's not just one continuum for the product. It's not just about the product. When you're actually selling, you're also having to sell yourself. You're also selling yourself, you the salesperson. So what I realized, I'm driving at one very important point, is that many, many years ago, I found myself, it was like 1988, I found myself in a situation where I was trying to teach a bunch of very young salespeople. I was about 24 at the time. The salespeople were in their 20s. Now, I am what you call a natural born closer. For whatever reason, from the first time I started to try to sell, I was the top producer in any company I went to, and sales just intuitively, automatically made sense to me. And I always outperformed everybody around me by a very large margin. And I built a very large company in my early 20s in the meat and seafood industry. I made a bunch of mistakes and lost all my money, and that's what brought me to Wall Street. And eventually I found myself owning my own brokerage firm. I was 24 years old, and I had 12 kids working for me, and I stumbled upon an untapped niche in the U.S. stock market. And you've probably seen this in the movie, The Wolf of Wall Street, right? And I had these 12 kids. They were not very educated. They were not great salespeople. And I was trying to get them to do something extremely difficult. I was trying to teach them how to close sales for the wealthiest 1% of American investors, rich business owners, and I was trying to get them to sell them stocks that were priced between $5 and $10. Now, here's the thing. I tested the idea myself, and I was having incredible results. I was able to do it. I then taught the system to my junior partner. His name was Danny, the Jonah Hill character from the movie. He was able to do it. I taught him. But when I tried to teach the other 12 kids, they were not able to do it. They couldn't close the sale. And it was shocking to me because I had a 50% closing rate. Danny had about a 30+% closing rate. And the people I was trying to teach had a 0% closing rate. We're calling the same people, presenting the same stock, saying pretty much the same words, using the same lead source, but for whatever reason, there was something happening that allowed me to be able to close the sale, and the kids that were working with me, they could not do it. And ultimately, now at the time, I was teaching a very powerful way of sales of training, right? And it was doing really well, and I was doing good, but we were selling penny stocks to average moms and pops. It was a much easier sale. When I switched to now trying to have these same kids who were succeeding at selling penny stocks to average moms and pops, I tried to teach them now how to do this with rich people. The system broke down. It stopped working. So in other words, you know, in the engineering world, you would call that like catastrophic failure. I had a system. The system appeared to be working well, but when I stressed the system with a very difficult sale, the system collapsed. And what I realized is I needed a new way of training salespeople. And this was 1988 when this happened. And at the time, there was no internet. And I started going to the library, reading books on sales. I was attending seminars. And what I quickly realized is that despite the fact that my system I was teaching at the time, which did not have a name, it was still a great system, That was not good enough. It wasn't working. But yet when I checked other people's systems, my system was light years ahead of theirs. So I had nowhere to go. Essentially, I was stuck. I had this great idea, but I needed to come up with a new way of training salespeople, a more effective way of training salespeople how to close sales. And ultimately, after about a month of trying and failing, I came up with a revolutionary approach for training salespeople. And in an instant, in one evening, it all came out of me, and I invented a system that you probably have heard of now, which is famous all over the world, and I'm going to write it out for you. The system is called the straight line system. And essentially, the reason the system is called the straight line is because on that night that I invented it, it was October of 1988, for the very first time, what I did is I stood before my room of guys, my 12 kids, right? Let me turn the page here for you, 1 second. I don't want to waste any paper here, right? I don't want to kill any more trees than I have to, okay? All right, so the reason the system is called the straight line is because on this evening, what I did is, in an effort to explain to these 12 salesmen what was going on, why they weren't able to close, I stood before them and I said these words. I said, guys, I said, don't you get it? I'm like, every sale is the same. Now let me write these words down for you. Every sale is the same. This is the basis of everything that was behind developing the straight line. What I meant by this statement, I was standing in front of these kids and I was saying, guys, why can't you close? I don't understand. I'm doing it. I taught Dan to do it. Why can't you do it? And they started complaining to me that there were so many objections. They kept getting hit with different objections, that the rich people kept cutting them off. And they just it was thousands, it was 1,000 objections. So I said, really, there's 1,000 objections? And they were, well, yeah, there's 1,000 objections. I said, great, let's write all 1,000 objections down. And I actually made them go through each individual objection. I said, come on, guys, yell them out. Give me one by one. Some kid says, let me think about it. I said, great, let me think about it. And I wrote that down on the board. I said, what else? Someone else yells, they want to call back. I said, great, call back. I wrote that in the board. I said, what's next? Bad time of year. I said, great. I wrote that in the board. What else? They want to speak to their wife. I said, great. I wrote wife on the board. It's 4 on the board. I said, guys, that's 4. We have 996 to go. Come on, keep going. And on they went, and on they went. They kept listing objection after objection after objection. And at the end of the day, when they had exhausted everything they could think of, every possible objection, there were only, I'll tell you the number, ready? 14. There were only 14 objections on the board, not 1,000. In other words, despite what they had thought to be true, there was only 14 objections they were hearing, not 1,000. And in fact, half of these objections, half of them were repeats of 2 objections. They were saying, I want to speak to someone else, like my wife, my lawyer, my accountant, my broker, the tooth fairy, Santa Claus, or bad time of year, as in, it's the wrong time. It's Christmas time. It's tax time. It's back to school time. It's Groundhog's Day. It's leap. You get it? So half of these 14 were basically repeats of 2 objections. So it was really only about 7 objections. And in that moment, something hit me. And I looked at these kids and said, you guys are unbelievable. I said, you're whining about all of these objections, yet there's only 14. Half of them are repeats of 2. But guys, even those don't matter. Even those don't matter. And that's when I said these. I said, guys, don't you get it? I said, every sale is the same. Every sale is the same. And when I said those words, the 12 salespeople looked at me, they're like, what do you mean? I could see by their faces. They're like, what do you mean every sale is the same? Every sale's not the same. Every sale is different. People say different things. People have different needs. People have different values. People have different experiences. People have different pain points. How could every sale possibly be the same? And while all of that is true, people do have different needs. People do have different values, different pain points. People do have different experiences they bring into a sale. That has nothing to do with what I was talking about. What I meant that night, and what turned out to be probably the most profound thing I've ever said about selling in my life, is that despite all that stuff, the different needs, values, beliefs, pain points, despite all that stuff, the same three elements must line up in a prospect's mind before you have any chance of closing them. There are three things, three core elements that must line up in someone's mind before you can close, before they will say yes. And if even one of those is missing, you basically have no shot of closing them at all. So let me repeat that. The reason that every sale is the same is that despite, no matter what you're selling, it could be an intangible product like an idea. It could be a tangible product like an automobile or a home. It could be offline, online, high ticket, low ticket. It doesn't matter what you're selling, who you're selling it to, or whether you're selling it in person or over the phone or through Zoom. The same three things must line up in the prospect's mind, meaning the prospect needs to be thinking three things before they will say yes. And those three things, I came to call them and you ready what it is? They are called the 3 10s. And what are the 10s? Now we're back to that certainty scale. So what a 10 is, it's that line I drew, right? With a 1 meaning they hate it, a 10 meaning the prospect loves the product. So watch. Before someone says yes, before they're going to buy, number one, they must absolutely, positively love the product. That's your first 10. So remember what I said. If you have the certainty scale, 1 is, it's the worst thing in the world. 10 is, oh my God, it's the best, right? So obviously, you want someone to be as close to a 10 as possible. And the closer they are, the more likely they are to say yes. But again, it's not enough that they love the product that you're selling. As a salesperson, you must also get them to trust and connect with you. You, the salesperson. So you're not just selling them the product, you're also selling yourself. You must trust and connect with the prospect. So let's say that you accomplish that as well. Let's say that when you get to the end of your presentation, they're like, wow, I love this. This is a great product. Yeah, this product is awesome. And I really trust this person. I trust the salesperson. Will they buy now? The answer, once again, is maybe. Maybe they will, and maybe they won't. Why? Because there's also a third element at play here as well. And that is they must also trust and connect with the company that stands behind the product. In other words, there's going to be a company that has to deliver the product, that's going to offer them customer service, that they're going to have to interact with, that is going to stand behind the guarantee. So essentially what happens is, imagine this. Imagine you're a salesperson and you want to, and let's go back to automobiles, right? And let's say you want to sell a car to someone, and when you're done with your presentation and you explain how much the car is going to cost them, how much money they have to pay, and you ask them for the order, if they love the car, and we're talking about a qualified person, someone that can afford the car they want, right? They love the product, they totally trust you, but let's say they don't trust, they've heard things about the actual car dealership, the store where you're working. They've heard that the service here is awful. I know that people that buy cars from this car dealership, they have very bad experiences. If something goes wrong with the car, they can never get the car fixed. And when they do get it fixed, it just is going to break again. Question, if a person is thinking that right when they're about to make a decision, are they going to say yes? No, they don't. Now, what do they say? So now I want to slow this down. This is like the crux of how you become a professional salesperson, right? You need to understand this concept. I'm going to say it again. So in other words, these three elements, product, you, the company, no matter what you're selling, offline or online, the prospect, before they say yes, or before they say no, or before they say, let me think about it, let me call you, before they say anything, their brain says, they instantly size up, where are they? How certain am I? And what will happen is, let's say they're absolutely certain about the product, but they don't trust you, and they're not so sure about the company. And you ask them to buy. So they love the product, but they're not sure about you, not sure about the company. What would that person say to you when you ask them to buy? Would they say, sorry, Jordan, I don't trust you. Sorry, I don't trust your... Would they say that? The answer is no. We've been taught societally to be much more reserved and gentler, and that's kind of like, wow, that's really in your, I don't trust you. That's really like, whoa, what do you mean you don't trust me? So we've been taught, we don't say those things. Instead, what the prospect will say is, sounds good, Jordan, let me think about it. Let me call you back. It's a bad time. They'll hit you with a common objection. So what happens is when you start to sell, what salespeople very quickly realize is that when they ask for someone to buy from them, it's not that they get no. People don't say no, not interested. That's not what blows most of your sales. Rather, people will say, oh, it sounds good. Let me think about it. Let me call you back. Bad time. You'll get hit with one of the so-called common objections. And what those common objections are is they're actually smoke screens for uncertainty. When someone is feeling unsure, they're not sure if your product is the best, rather than looking at you and saying, I think your product sucks, or I don't think it's that good, or I don't trust you as far as I can throw you. That's not what they'll say. That's going to create an argument. So people instead will smile at you and say, oh yeah, it sounds pretty good, Jordan. Let me think it over. It's a circuit breaker. It's a smoke screen for uncertainty. So what happens is when you ask for the order for the first time, typically in most situations, it's not that your prospect says, no, I don't want it. They'll say, let me think about it. Let me call you back. Bad time. They'll hit you with one of the common objections. And what your goal is as a professional salesperson is to somehow overcome the common objections. And essentially, and the way you do that is by increasing their level of certainty for these three elements. So when someone says to me, let me think about it, if the methodology, if I try to get them to buy by getting into an argument with them saying, let me just explain why you don't really need to think about this. And I start trying to tell you, if you think about it, you're going to miss out because the special price is going to go away. And I just try to overcome, let me think about it. It doesn't work. All it does is it causes us to break rapport. If someone says, let me call you back, and I try to address, well, here's why callbacks don't work. You're busy, I'm busy. We'll be like two ships passing in the night. If I just focus on the objection itself, I won't get anywhere, because all it will do is if I answer that one objection, they'll simply hop to another objection. They'll just switch from let me call you back to it's not the right time right now. They'll just hop from objection to objection. We call that objection hopping. Because what's actually happening is that they're uncertain about one of these three elements. That's what's triggering the objection. So the only way to actually get them to buy is not so much to answer the objection, it's to use that objection as an opportunity to actually go back and build more certainty for these three elements. We actually are going to have to go back and explain more things, say more things, show them things, explain to them why, in fact, our product is the best, why you are trustworthy, and I'll tell you more about my company as well. We're educating the customer and making them much more certain. And if we make them certain enough, eventually they will buy from us. That's what you're doing as a salesperson. So let me put it a different way. This is the most critical thing of all. Just remember this. As a professional salesperson, what you're not doing, see this word no? I don't know what it's like in Brazil, but we have this thing, between men and women, no means no, right? When a girl says no, it means no, right? When a prospect means no in selling, you know what it means? It means no. The word no, when someone says no, it means no, I'm not interested. I don't want it. Leave me alone. I'm not interested. As a professional salesperson, your job, what you're doing is you are not taking these people. You're not taking those people and trying to somehow, by some clever means, get them interested in what you have and get them to buy. That's not what you're doing. And this is one of the biggest mistakes that young salespeople make, is they try to take people who don't want what they're selling, who are not interested in even hearing about it, and they waste their time trying to somehow, through pressure or subterfuge, somehow convince these people to be interested. That is a complete and utter waste of time. That is not what a professional salesperson does. Rather, what they do, you don't take no and turn it into a yes. Here's what you do. Here are all the things that you do as a salesperson. Ready? Watch. I don't want to waste paper here. Someone says to you, let me think about it. Yes, a professional salesperson takes that person and gets them to buy now. That's what you get paid for. Not no. You don't take no and turn it into yes. You take let me think about it and turn it into yes. Call me back. Yes. When someone says, sounds good, Jordan, give me a call back, you take that person and you get them to buy now. Get them to say yes. Someone says it's a bad time yet. Yes, you take that objection and you take that and make them say yes. This is a crucial distinction. You're not in the business of turning the word no into yes. Rather, what you're doing is you're actually learning how to, I'm going to use the word here, it's called sift or prospect. What a salesperson must learn how to do is to quickly and elegantly sift through a group of potential buyers, prospects we call them. You must learn how to prospect, sift through these prospects and find the ones who actually are interested in what you have. They're interested. They're not ready to buy, maybe. I'm not saying they're going to buy from you, but they're interested in what you have. They need what you're selling. They want what you're selling. And they can also afford what you're selling. You understand that? They actually have a need. You're not trying to take people who don't need it and somehow let me trick them into buying. This is the biggest waste of time. If you just learn this one thing from this lesson here, it's going to change your life as a salesperson. You'll make twice as much money. Because the amount of time that salespeople waste trying to turn uninterested people into interested people, it's honestly the biggest waste. And also, at the end of the day, you'll say, wow, how come I didn't close any sales? You know why? Because you're speaking to the wrong people. If you spend all day long with people who don't want what you have, you know what you're going to be? Wasting your time. And you'll start saying, maybe I'm not a very good salesperson. No, I couldn't have closed those people. There's me, Jordan, you put me in front of 10 people who don't want what I have, I can't close them. I'm not going to try. The difference is I will very quickly ask them some questions. I'll realize, they don't really want what I have. Next, I'll find 10 more. So while you're busy trying to convince these people who don't want what you have, what am I doing? I'm on to the next 10, and the next 10, and the next 10. And when I find someone who actually is interested, that's when I go to work. Then I do my thing, and I use my system called the straight line. So when I have someone that needs what I'm selling, they're interested in hearing about it, I will then use the straight line system to make them massively certain. So when I'm done, they're like, wow, that's the best. Wow, that product is the best. Yeah. And Jordan, oh my God, he's the great one, a nice guy. I can trust him. And what a great company. I'm going to get them incredibly certain about all three of those elements, those 3 10s, and then they'll buy from me. So the first step, the end, there's a great scene at the end of the movie, right? What does it say? Sell me this pen. Sell me this pen. And Leo goes from person to person to person and says, sell me this pen. And what do they say? Because they're not professionals. They're not trained yet. They're like, this is a good pen. This pen is the best pen out there. This pen will write upside down. This pen never runs out. This is it's ridiculous. So what would you really say? Think about this. If someone said, sell me this pen, what would you do? How would you sell someone a pen? Well, remember, what are we doing? A salesperson, the first thing a salesperson must do, you're a sifter. I want to only be trying to sell to people who need what I want, who are interested. So the first question I would ask is, so tell me, how long have you been in the market for a pen? I'll ask them a question. How long have you been looking to buy a pen? Now, imagine they say to me, oh, I'm not looking to buy a pen. I don't want a pen. I'm like, great, have a nice day. I don't sell to people who don't want what I have. Next. That's what a real salesperson does. So if someone says, here, sell me this pen, and they want me to do it, and they want to sharpshoot me, say, well, I don't want a pen. I'm like, great, have a nice day. Next. And they're like, wow, he really is a salesperson. You don't try to sell to people who don't want what you're selling. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2 is that when you enter a sales encounter, and this is your second major takeaway right now. When you enter a sales encounter, here's the ticket. The reason that every sale is the same, you have those 3 elements, right, that have to line up. But that's only part of it. The reason that every sale is the same is because I make it the same, and I'm going to show you how to make it the same. You must make every sale the same, because what you're going to do is you're going to learn how to take immediate control of the conversation. Let me explain what I mean. So watch, there are these, I'll turn the page one more time. I hate to waste all this paper, but waste a little bit more paper, okay? Watch. So imagine you have these three elements. What are they? They must love the product. Product, right? They must trust you. And they must trust the company. There's three elements, right? Okay, all three of those must be lined up. So in some moment in the conversation, at some point, when the salesperson is thinking about whether they should buy or not, you ask them for the order. And in that moment, if those three things are all lined up, they'll probably say yes. Question: which one should you line up first? Which one should you try to line up second? In what order should you do it? Is this come first? There's an order. So it's not just that there's three, there's also an order in which to do this. So what happens is this. Imagine if you're in control, you're dictating the flow of the encounter. It allows you say, you know what? I'm in charge. I'm in control. I'm going to line up these elements in the same way every time. In other words, if you're in control of the sale, you can then use the same strategy again and again and again to line things up. Imagine when you buy, if any of your parents buy, you're probably too young for this, but one day you'll be parents and you'll buy your children a toy and it comes with that dreaded instruction manual. And you're like, oh my God, I got to put together, and there's 20 steps, right? Well, guess what? If you don't use the instructions and try to start at step 15, it doesn't go very well. There's a step 1, step 2, step 3, a strategy for putting something together. There's a strategy for closing a sale. What comes first? What comes second? What comes third? We make every sale the same because the first step in the process is that you must take control of the conversation. And in fact, the reason that I was having so much success back in the day and my 12 kids couldn't close is because they were unable to take control. See, what was happening is, and I realized this that night, is I had a certain way of sounding, a certain way of talking, that the moment someone heard my voice, they would realize certain things about me. And they said, you know what, I'm going to allow this man to guide me through the process. They perceived me a certain way. And what I said to my guys that night, this is very profound. I said, guys, you have 4 seconds. You got 4 seconds to establish 3 crucial things. 4 seconds. 3 things. I'll tell you what they are. In the first 4 seconds, the prospect must think you are, number 1, sharp as a tack. You're sharp. You're with it. You're on the ball, meaning you're a born problem solver. You're not going to waste time. You're sharp. You're quick, right? Number 2, you're enthusiastic as hell, meaning that you have a way of sounding that's enthusiastic, that what you have must be good. When someone speaks with enthusiasm, you're like, wow, there's something there. I want to know more. So sharp as a tack, enthusiastic as hell, and number 3, most important of all, you are an expert in your field. You have 4 seconds to establish those 3 things in the mind of your prospect. If you are perceived as being an expert in your field, you know what happens? The prospect will defer to you. They will allow you to guide them through the conversation, to take control of the sale. So watch, let me just draw out for you a sale here. Okay, watch. So this is a basic sale, and the reason the system is called the straight line is, watch, imagine a sale as a straight line. This is your open here. This is your close here. Open, close, right? Now, what you'll find when you actually go out into the world and sell is that every once in a while, you get a very easy, almost what we call a lay-down client, where everything you say everything you show, everything you do, the prospect is like, yes, 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 and they buy without even giving you a single objection. The prospect is basically almost pre-sold before they enter the encounter. We call this the perfect straight line sale. It's where everything you say, everything you do, the prospect is yes, 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 and they buy. No objections. And remember, the shortest distance between 2 points is what? A straight line. The problem is that in the real world of sales, people tend to go off the straight line. They have objections. They have questions. They have concerns. They interrupt you. So you want to keep the prospect on the straight line and stay in control of the sale. They want to take you off the straight line and go out of control, off to Pluto here or Uranus down here. Not good places to be, either one, right? So you want to keep them moving forward towards the close. And the way you do this, it starts in the first few seconds by being perceived as an expert. You must be perceived as an expert. If someone sees you as being an expert in those first few seconds, we have been conditioned since we're yay big, we're little boys and girls, to defer to experts. When we were young, we were sick, our parents took us to a doctor, and we saw how even our own parents would defer to a doctor. They were experts, and we were taught that when you are in the presence of an expert, you answer their questions. You listen. You allow the expert to guide you. So what happens in selling is that if you are perceived correctly, which means sharp, enthusiastic, as an expert in your field, the prospect will defer to you. They will allow you to then control the flow of the conversation. And what you want to do then is once you are perceived the right way, you want to use that positioning of control, you're an expert, to start asking questions. And you start asking questions to the prospect to identify what their needs are, what their values are, what their pain points are. And by the way, to find out whether they truly are interested, whether they want what you're having, whether they can afford it, and you go through this process of sifting. You gather intelligence and you sift out the potential buyers from those that are not right from your product. And it all starts in these first 4 seconds. Now, we only have a few minutes left here, okay? And this is just some scratching the surface. But there's one more crucial point that I want to lay out for you here and kind of round this whole introductory course out. And that is the key to success is you must take control of the conversation. You must control the sales encounter. And you have 4 seconds to do it. The $1 million question here is how. How do you do it? How do you, in 4 seconds, position yourself as an expert? How do you get someone to think that you're sharp, on the ball, and expert in only 4 seconds? Think about that. Is it the words that you say? I mean, what words can you say to someone in 4 seconds? Like, hey, Bill, I'm sharp. I'm an expert. I swear. I'm great. They'll be like, what the fuck? People will be like, the words don't exist. There's really nothing that you can say to someone in 4 seconds that would make them think that you're an expert. The way we do that is not through the words that we say. In fact, the way that we do that is through what's called unconscious communication, which is our tonality and our body language. There are certain ways, tones of voice that we use, certain ways that we move our body, how we dress, how you make eye contact in person, how you shake someone's hand, how you hold yourself, how close you stand to it. There's all these subtle body language moves, and when you're on the phone, the tonality, the way in which you say what you say. When you use tonality the right way, you will be shocked at how easy influencing becomes. So what we do with the straight line system, and what the straight line system really is, the straight line system is a step step-by-step formula that allows you to immediately take control of the conversation. It then shows you what questions to ask, how you identify the buyers, the potential buyers from those that are wrong for your product. You want to eliminate the people that are wrong and then continue to present to the ones who potentially will buy. And it shows you very quickly how to transfer the certainty that you feel inside of you. How do you take the knowledge that you have about the product you're selling, about yourself, meaning that you are trustworthy? How do you, whether it's in person or on the phone, how do you, in a sales setting, transfer massive certainty for all three of those tens, all those three elements, to another human being in a way that makes them trust you, have confidence in you, and allows you to get paid massive sums of money? So when we talk about ethical persuasion, what we're talking about is using the straight line system as a communication strategy to help you communicate the value of what you have to offer, the value that you personally will provide as a salesperson, the value the company has that will sell the product as well, how to communicate that to someone else in real time in a way that makes them connect with you, trust you, so when you ask them for the order, they say, yes, let's do it. That's what the straight line does. And I will tell you this, those 12 kids, now you saw the movie, so you probably know what happened. For 1 month before I invented the straight line system, they hadn't closed one sale. Well, that very next day, I invented the system on a Tuesday evening. That next Wednesday morning, these 12 kids came back, picked up the telephone, started dialing using the straight line system, and within 3 months, they were all multimillionaires. They told their friends about it, and people came running into my boardroom from all over the country. And within 6 months, I had the largest firm in the United States, and I was making $1 million per week back in the 1980s, believe it or not. That's what happened. And if there's one mistake I made, and I want to caution you about this, is remember this, that at the end of the day, you must maintain your ethics and integrity. The mistake I made is I got so caught up in the ability to close and the ability to train people to close that I lost sight that what you're really doing here as a salesperson is you're helping people fill needs by giving them quality products, quality services. If you just focus on helping people get what they need, and I'm not being corny here, I'm being serious. If you just focus on helping people get what they need, fill their needs, get what they want, use the straight line, you will make so much money as a result of that. And you will help so many people. You truly have an amazing, empowered life. That's what the straight line system is all about. So I want you to think of this as not just as a vehicle to make as much money as you can. Yes, you make a lot of money using the straight line. But what you're really doing is you're helping other people get the things that they need, to make decisions they should be making. And as a result of that, because you help them make this decision, yes, you get rich in the process. When the straight line's being used the right way, it's the ultimate win-win for both sides. You help companies grow because you're a professional salesperson. You get people things they need, and you get rich as well. That's the bottom line. All right? So when we go through this actual course here in more detail, you'll see it's all very easy to learn, bite-sized chunks of information, and step by step, very quickly, you can become what I call a world-class closer. And once you are there, it's truly a license to print money for the rest